Well, I hope this video finds you doing well. Over the course of the next 10 minutes or so, we're going to be talking about price. And so we're going to have a brief discussion over the psychological aspect of price. We're going to discuss pricing objectives, and then we're going to end with some pricing strategies, which of course tie into those overarching goals and objectives. Now, price is very important. We talk about what we call a psychological aspect of it because it communicates a very significant amount to us when we look at price. Price indicates a lot of different things, including quality and what we receive in terms of value from the item that we're purchasing. And so absent of any other piece of information, we will look to price as a signal for quality. And so items that we see are more expensive, we tend to view them as being greater in terms of quality. And then items, of course, that are lesser in price, we tend to believe are lower in quality. Now, it doesn't always work like that, but that's the general assumption. And so businesses, knowing that, will use price as a way to communicate something about the products, either lowering them to communicate value, right? I receive more benefits for the cost that I am paying, or raising the prices to create this illusion of prestige that may or may not be true, but that's really beside the point because we're trying to communicate something simply with the number that itself, or by itself rather. And so that's the important thing of price. Now, price needs to be consistent with all the other brand elements, so distribution, promotion, as well as the product itself should be consistent, meaning if we're trying to market an item as exclusive and very high-end, the price should also communicate that. All of the elements should be consistent with one another. Now, assuming that we have that all figured out, we need to create what we call a pricing objective, which is essentially our goal. What are we trying to accomplish by pricing this particular item? And there are usually four common pricing objectives. The first one is what we call building profitability. Obviously, with building profitability, our primary focus is, of course, being profitable. And so our main goal here, or our main focus, is looking at ultimately costs, which can include variable as well as fixed. And so our primary goal here is we're going to take a look at what does it cost us to actually make this? What are the variable costs, i.e. the costs associated with producing the good, commonly referred to as cost of goods sold? And then what are those fixed costs, those utilities, those indirect labor like salaries, advertising, interest, and all those other fixed costs? What are those, right? Doing kind of a break-even analysis. And so we're trying to figure out, can we be profitable actually selling this? That's our primary goal, is making sure that we cover all of those costs and we're still making money after covering all of our fixed as well as variable costs. So usually you're going to consider those things. You'll do a break-even analysis. You may do an economics of one unit analysis. You may do a couple of other things simply to see if you're going to be profitable. Now, the problem with this objective is that simply because you're going to be profitable doesn't mean that consumers are going to pay the price for you to be profitable. You have to consider what demand is in the market. What's the consumer willing to pay? Chances are you may not be able to acquire all of the materials needed to produce the product at a price that consumers are willing to pay. So although at some fundamental level all companies want to be profitable, you do need to consider some other variables, not just simply what it costs you to produce whatever product or offer whatever service that you're trying to sell in this case. So another common pricing objective is what we call boosting volume. And in this objective, our goal is to sell more units. And so we're not necessarily concerned about the overall profitability on a per unit basis, right? At some level we need to be profitable though, because no matter how many units we sell, we won't make money. But we're generally going to generate a significant amount of sales by selling a very high number of items through volume. And so we may make a little bit on each individual item, but we are going to sell a great deal of units. And so altogether, right, multiplying that very, very small dollar amount per unit by a large number of units, we're going to make some pretty decent money. Very, very common for grocery stores. Margins are very, very slim, but they do sell a lot of items, so they tend to make up some money for volume. So if you're going to try to boost volume, if that's your that's your primary pricing objective, you have a couple of different strategies that you can use to try and achieve that. The first one is what we call penetration pricing. And penetration pricing is a specific pricing strategy where what you're looking at is charging extremely low prices, at least in the beginning. And your goal with charging extremely low prices is to build market share. And so if you, once again, right, by charging low prices, we are making the obstacles, the hurdles to purchasing our said product much less. So people are more willing to pay it and try the item. And that's the primary, at least, objective here. How we achieve that is by charging prices that are very, very, very low. Southwest Airlines, which is a popular airline company, does this even to this day. And they've been able to carve out a pretty decent market niche by charging very, very low prices, so much so that competitors aren't willing to compete with them. They kind of operate in their own market niche away from some other competitors because competition realizes I could compete with them, but the margins are so low that it's very, very difficult to make any money whatsoever. And so they kind of let Southwest operate almost on an island, so to speak, because the profit margins are very, very slim, but by doing so, they're boosting the volume of their business. They're making sure that they can actually fill airlines or jets so that when they're transporting passengers, it's not a bunch of empty seats and all those other things. So very, very common. This is also common with certain products when they first come out, right? The price is lowered significantly. The intent, of course, is to get people to try it, build market share, and then what can happen is products can gradually increase in price over a certain period of time once that market share is actually captured. But it certainly discourages competition because at least in the interim, the profit margin is very, very low. So companies can use this and keep this type of strategy, or they can use it kind of intermittently and then gradually begin to increase price once they've had a healthy amount of market share, which is the percentage of the market that they, of course, control. Another strategy for boosting volume is what we call everyday low pricing. Commonly abbreviated as EDLP, and I'm sure you're familiar with this one. Walmart has pioneered this particular pricing strategy. And so the goal here is by maintaining consistent, what we call discount prices. In order to achieve long-term profitability. And so I don't try and vary my prices very significantly. I'm going to charge the same amount all the time. And what the benefit of this is that customers know what to expect. They're not going to be coming in on certain days and avoiding coming in on others because they want to wait for that sale, right? That causes some volatility in terms of your sales figures. Instead, what they know is that every day they go in there, regardless of the day, they know what to expect. They're going to get every day, they're going to get low prices, they're going to be consistent, they're going to be discounted, typically some of the lowest in that particular industry. And so that ensures a steady stream of traffic, rather using a different model where, you know, one week you run a bunch of discounts, and so you train people to kind of wait for the discounts, which causes some volatility in terms of when you can expect revenues. But obviously Costco also uses this strategy where prices are at a certain level, and kind of what you see is what you get. And so that is certainly one way of boosting volume, is just lowering prices dramatically. That way consumers know what to expect. All right, the next pricing strategy for boosting volume is what we call high-low pricing. And this one is very, very interesting because it can be a little confusing, and I'll explain why. But high-low pricing is offering special sales on certain products to increase traffic. And so with high-low pricing, you're typically utilizing a lot of sales promotion, which we know now, short-term promotional activities designed to elicit an immediate purchase. So you're trying to get consumers to do something right away for a short period of time. And so high-low pricing commonly is illustrated through JCPenney's. They commonly run advertisements every week. And so it's like 40% off one week, and then the next week it's kind of full price and all those different things. And it's on various items. But the goal is to get you in the store to buy that item, and hopefully you begin to look around and purchase something else. So a very, very common strategy. The problem, and that JCPenney's has run into, which was what I brought up before, is that consumers learn to expect that kind of pricing. And so they're going to kind of wait you out and not purchase things at full price because they don't want to be caught off guard. And then 2 weeks later, all of a sudden the item is on sale. And so JCPenney's tried to go away from this strategy. They tried to adopt this everyday low pricing model. And so what they did is they hired the head of the retail division from Apple, who's Ron Johnson, put him as CEO. They adopted the everyday low pricing strategy, right, for boosting volume. And it wasn't very successful because it was so ingrained in JCPenney consumers to expect prices or expect sales and discounts and different things that they were just kind of waiting the process out and almost waiting for that to happen. And it wasn't a successful process. Eventually they had the board ousted Ron Johnson because the strategy did not work. So for retailers that go with this strategy, or businesses for that matter, once you commit to it, it's very, very difficult to kind of go away from it because, once again, you train consumers to kind of think through that lens of expecting certain discounts. All right, and the last one for boosting volume is what we call loss leader pricing. All right, loss leader pricing is very, very common. What you do here is you're going to actually price items temporarily below cost. And once again, same thing. Your primary goal is to boost traffic. And some companies utilize these for specific products. Some, it's kind of a temporary basis, so it could be more long-term. But the goal here is to get people to commit to the item, to get them into the store, and then ideally they purchase other things. But also, it's to get them to purchase the item so they need additional add-on products. And so, for example, take the Kindle Fire. At one point when the Kindle Fire HD first came out, Amazon was actually selling it for less than what it cost them to make it. I believe at one point, although this has changed for operating efficiencies, but at one point it was costing them about $206 to actually make this thing. And they were selling it for $199.99. So you might ask, really, what's the point of taking a loss on that product? Well, the reason they were taking a loss on it was because what do you do when you purchase a tablet? You need to purchase books now, and music, and movies, and apps, and all these other things. And so that item, they were willing to take a loss in order for consumers to purchase it and then acquire all of the other media that they would need to use for it. This is very common too with how inkjet printers are sold, right? Printers they practically give these things away because they know that you have to buy ink. And the ink is rather expensive, and usually they only have certain types of ink that you have to buy. So if you buy an HP printer, you have to buy their ink, and it adds up very, very quickly. And so they're willing to give you the printer to below cost because they know they're going to make up the money with actual ink. Video game consoles are primarily sold below cost at a certain point in time as well, as a way of building market share, but as a way of getting you into kind of their ecosystem, if you will. So now that you have to, you're purchasing games and different things for their system, it just gets you in their ecosystem. So now you're using all of their items for that matter. So this is very, very common, happens all the time because usually you're trying to make up the lost sales in other areas, but very, very common. All right, so we've gone over building profitability as one objective, boosting volume, as well as the 4 different strategies within that. And quickly, I'm going to just kind of go over some of the other objectives real fast. One of the other ones is what we call matching competition. And this is probably the easiest thing to at least procedurally do. All you do is you copy what your competitors are doing. So if, say, your competitor is Walmart and you want to compete with them, you charge exactly what Walmart does. Now, that will be very hard because Walmart certainly gets items for much cheaper than we could individually. And so that probably won't be possible unless we want to just lose a bunch of money, which isn't economically feasible. So that's one thing that you can do. But generally, this is very good if you are trying to match what we call the market leader. And so if you're in a particular market and there's a company that's kind of first, they have the most market share, and you're trying to position yourself as similar to them, one of the things you could do is simply just charge as much as them. And so what you're trying to communicate is that we have the same value, or we have the same exclusivity or prestige, and we communicate that through our prices. Or you may want to charge the same as someone even if you offer a better product. And so you're essentially trying to kind of run them out of business almost, because people can buy the same thing or buy something better for less than your competitor can, or less than their competitor for that matter, which certainly helps you. And so matching competition, I definitely personally don't recommend it, especially if you're going up against a very, very big company. But if you're going up against a smaller company, you might do that as a way of, kind of an economic stranglehold almost, especially if you offer better quality products and you can substantiate the loss, at least in the short term. But also if you want to position yourself next to a very good company, a lot of companies do that where they charge the same or they market themselves the same just so they can kind of benefit from the image that they have, so to speak. All right, and the last one is pricing for prestige. All right, so this is the last pricing objective. And here we are trying to communicate that our products are significant of quality. They're top quality items. And so what we have to do here is we have to engage in the strategy of price skimming. And so price skimming is offering products at what we call premium prices. Meaning we're going to charge a lot for these things. So the goal there is, once again, high prices communicates, right, the psychological aspect of price up here, communicates a great deal about the quality. And so that's what we're going to try and do. This is also very common in the introductory phases when you're trying to recover what we call development costs. And so, for example, like Apple, when they come out with the iPad or the iPhone, they can charge more because they're the first to market, right? So there isn't a competitor. There isn't a substitute product, if you will. And they have to recover all the research and development costs, the advertising and marketing that they actually paid. And so it is common for electronics companies to charge more early on because they want to recoup all of those developmental costs. It's very, very common. Now, in order to do that, the product has to be worthy of the price, right? If people buy it and then figure it out that it's not very good, they're going to communicate that via social media, and then the chances of you being able to sustain that is going to decrease dramatically. So that can't happen. And also, the product can't be easily copied, right? There cannot be substitute products. If something can easily replace it, then why would I purchase it at a more expensive price if I can buy this and it's the same thing? And so those are some things that need to be considered before using price skimming. But at least in the interim, right, early on, there may not be a competitor, and so maybe you can engage in price skimming simply to recover those developmental costs. Maybe you want to sustain that as a way to communicate to the market that you have a great quality item, but it must actually be a great quality item in order for you to be able to sustain that. So, kind of in summary, I know this is a little longer than I expected, but I get a little long-winded sometimes, so I apologize. But in summary, the pricing objectives you have, right, building profitability, boosting volume, matching competition, and then, of course, pricing per prestige. And then the individual pricing strategies, of course, penetration pricing, everyday low pricing, high-low pricing, loss leader, and then primarily price skimming under their respective categories, of course. But companies will typically utilize one of these, and you can actually take a look at this on your own, and based upon how they market them and all those different things, you can probably get a pretty good image, or at least understanding, of what type of pricing objective and strategy each company has, just by how they market, what it is that they're selling, and all those other different things. But at the end of it, hopefully that gives you a little bit of a better understanding of how companies actually price products and what's kind of the methodology and the process they use to do that. So thanks for watching. If you have questions, feel free and leave a comment below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks again for watching.